I'd like to thank Inclusion Ireland for inviting me here this morning to speak about a subject that I feel very passionately about. We've all heard facts and figures and the economic perspective. I'm here this morning to give you an insight into the human perspective, my personal perspective, but not only from my own perspective, but also, I guess, from a professional lens, because I work with people in the disability sector, across the disability sector. I would have worked with people with physical disability, intellectual disability, visual impairment, ASD across the sector, and I would also have worked with parents and teenagers. So I would hope that I would be able to reflect some of the challenges that they encounter every day. So I want to start by posing a question, a rhetorical but a real question. When a baby is born, all parents have, every parent I would imagine would have expectations for their child. They're going to grow up, they're going to be involved in their community, they're going to go to Montessori, they're going to go to school, they're going to be able to play in the schoolyard, they're going to play with their cousins, they're going to run about, and they're going to hopefully have a good life. That would be an average expectation. But the reality is, for many parents who get a diagnosis of a label for a child with a disability, all those expectations can go out the window when a medical professional walks into the room and says, "I'm sorry to tell you that your child has a label of Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, whatever it is, and he or she will effectively never be able to contribute meaningfully to society." I've had parents in the room in front of me with their teenagers crying, and that would have happened to them 18 years previously. This changes someone's expectations forever. Automatically, you are then thrown into a system that cannot, because of the way it's structured, even if you have very humane professionals working in the field, and there are many, they are still stuck in a system that doesn't respect individual requirements. So basically, what happens is you go into a surgeon or a consultant and they say, "Your child has this, your child has that, this is what needs to be done." I would argue that because you could be in a state of shock, you're not in an emotional place to argue. You don't know where to go, you don't know what to do. Psychologists and social workers, etc., they're doing their job, they're working in a system. Where do you go? What do you do? There is no one-stop shop to offer you impartial advice for you to make your own decision. So life has to go on. You may have other children at home. You have a house to run. Life goes on. Life can't stop. So your child grows up. If he or she uses a wheelchair, you suddenly realize, "Oh shit, my local community is not accessible. I can't go shopping. Who's going to mind my child if I go shopping? What's going to happen?" So as a family, you automatically, without even realizing it, may become socially excluded. If you're lucky, you might have a good family social support network. If you're not, you're totally snookered. What's going to happen? Then the child reaches school-going age. So what do? Do I send them off in the school bus to somewhere like St. Michael's House, Enable Ireland, CRC, or do I fight for them to get into their local school and to be part of their local community, to interact with other kids, to have meaningful friendships, relationships. The majority of people do now. This is the norm. And while that is very positive, and there has been huge developments since the early 90s into equal opportunities and policy provision with, say, the Epstein Act and the Disability Act and all the legislation we have behind us. That's all very positive, and I would be 100% supportive of that. However, I would argue, based on personal and professional experience, that it's far from perfect. Yeah, we've made great improvements. I will never deny that. There were very good professionals working in the field. But as the Minister alluded to this morning, unless structural reform happens, then we're sort of winning a losing battle. Because, okay, so a child goes to their local Montessori, for example, and say they use the services of St. Michael's House. I'm just picking it as an organisation, and that child is supported to attend the local Montessori school with the support of a member of staff from St. Michael's House. That member of staff goes into the Montessori school with the child and assists him to participate. But the reality is the other staff who work in the school every day and who work with the other children and support the children, they feel totally inadequate. They don't know how to ensure that this child is included. So what effectively happens, and I have heard this on a daily basis, the child is there, but is the child really included? No, they're pushed to one side with this the support staff. So, but everyone thinks they are, but they're not really. And why? Because the reality is the people on the ground, they feel very unsure, that they don't know what to do. And they'll say they don't have the resources, they don't have the financial resources. Yes, all services are very tight for money, but I would argue that the biggest challenge is that there's still a stigma and a fear about how genuinely to include children with disabilities in the community. So while we have all these policies and structures behind us, the genuine fears still exist. And earlier this morning we heard about, say, the costs in education and provision to special needs assistance. Absolutely, and that isn't right. However, I would feel very, very strongly that the way the service is structured needs to be reformed. Just to give you a little bit of an insight, when I was in primary and secondary school, I attended both mainstream and specialist provision, so I had an insight into both. And at that time, there wasn't such a service as an SNA. And to be perfectly honest, I'm glad there wasn't. Because while it was very tough, and while I was sometimes isolated at lunchtime, I didn't have, friends to push me around. That's a whole other ball game, because, you're different, and it was quite challenging. But on the other hand, it wasn't all that bad, because at least I didn't have someone following me around all the time and asking me was I all right, asking me was I this, was I that. When you're a child and you're a teenager, you don't necessarily want somebody following you around and coming behind you. And if you think back to when you were a teenager, what other people think and the perceptions other people have of you and how you make friends and how you're included in your community is very, very important. Children and teenagers with disabilities are no different. They're not different at all. And sometimes I would work with people in their early teens, and when you actually sit down and talk to them and peel all the layers back, they say, okay, I have this label, be it dyslexia, be it whatever it is, but really I'm not that different to anyone else. I just need assistance to learn or to use my wheelchair to do whatever I do. So, but going back to my original point, so basically when you are given a label of a disability from a very early age, your parents don't always feel they have the right for you to have the same expectations. So they don't expect the same of you. They don't always demand the same of society to fight for you. And if they do fight for you, they're seen as the one that has a chip on their shoulder, that's always complaining, and that neglects the other children in order to push for the rights of the disabled child. That isn't a good place to be in any family. And just to go back to my point about the special needs assistance, I'm in no way saying that these services are needed. They are absolutely needed for people to participate fully and equally to everyone else. My argument is the way that it's structured needs to be reformed. There needs to be a whole new system of training and supervision in place so that we are educating young adults not just academically, but that we are taking them out of this culture of dependency and learned helplessness. It isn't just physical disabilities, it's about the way you think, the way you feel, the way you react to others around you. And if you're cocooned and you're not allowed to make mistakes and be disciplined appropriately, well, how are you going to be included in society? Then if you move it on and you say you're just doing your junior cert in school, and hopefully you've done reasonably well. Hopefully you may have passed all your subjects, and if you're lucky enough and have the ability, you might be in some higher level classes. But we all know the provision for career guidance has been slashed under Rory Quinn. I don't think it will ever be the same again. That has a negative impact on everyone, all young people, with and without disabilities. It doesn't matter. But it has an extra implication for a student with a disability, because I take my original point, you don't have the same expectations, you don't have the same, some people don't have the same desire to fight. They just want to be the same. They don't want to always be advocating and thinking that they're causing trouble, because people with disabilities, if you're a strong advocate, you are perceived as somebody that's causing trouble and that can't stay quiet. That's the way you are perceived. But what happens then is you're going to transition year, or you're going to fifth year, and you're thinking, why should I think about what I want to do next? Sure, I'm never going to do anything. I wouldn't even be able to work in a shop or do anything like that. Sure, why would I? How? And so then what happens is you have some very, very bright people who are just left there and who aren't given the services and the support, that they're not even given the choices to think for themselves, to make mistakes, and they're not challenged and they're not supported to make informed decisions. And I'm not just talking about high achievers. There are many, many people I have worked with through the education system and on a personal level who I believe would do much, much better if they were supported and informed properly of their choices that were out there. But the system doesn't allow it. there was mention of the disability allowance earlier, and why should teenagers who are still in school at 16 receive disability allowance? Okay, it's a contentious issue. It isn't a straightforward one. Let me give you a bit of a personal insight. So I was 16. I applied for it. It was then the DPMA, Disabled Persons Maintenance Allowance, and my family would have been working class, and they wouldn't have been able to afford things like grinds. If you remember, I just said there wasn't such a support as an SNA. So I attended the mainstream local school, and in order to get assistance to use the bathroom at lunchtime, I paid somebody to come in to assist me to use the bathroom out of my disability allowance. That's what I use it for. I also use it for maths grinds in Fisher and Leaving Cert. It wasn't used for anything else. That's what it was used for. Then I was lucky enough, because I guess I fought the system. I said, no, I'm not putting up with this. I was very fortunate in the sense that I had very, very good teachers behind me who supported me all the way, 100%. And I will readily say that it was a combination of my refusal to take no for an answer, as well as their belief in me that got me, it set me on the way to be where I am today. Only for them, and there were some very key people and it wasn't my parents. People would think that it was. It wasn't. I had some other very supportive, caring individuals that helped me to get where I am. So what happened was I didn't get any guidance or support or direction, but I knew that I didn't want to live in rural Ireland, that I wanted to go to college, I wanted to have my own house, I wanted to have my own van, I wanted to have a boyfriend, I wanted all the normal things that people want. But how was I going to do this? How was I going to do it? I wasn't quite sure. All I knew for sure is that I had to keep going to school every day and achieving high grades and doing my best, because that was the only way I was going to get out. So what happened was that in 1993, I was looking in the newspaper one evening, and I saw that a documentary called In From the Margins was being televised. That brings back a lot of memories. And I took a break from the study and I watched it. And it talked about the kind of birth of independent living in Ireland. And that was the night I decided this is how I'm going to get where I want to go, as well as getting the points that I know I can get to get into university. And that night I made up my mind, and I didn't give up until I got there. So then what happened was I did my Leaving Cert, and thankfully I had the exam accommodations. I had a scribe, which meant I dictated my answers. I was in a room on my own. I dictated my answers and somebody wrote them for me. It worked very well. I left home and I came to college and never went back. So it wasn't my intention when I started out on that journey to work with in the disability sector. If I'm brutally honest, initially when I finished my degree in social science in UCD, I didn't want really to work in the disability sector, and I was unemployed for a year, and then by default I fell into it. and I realised that this is actually really good and I can make a difference here. And if we go back to my point a few minutes ago, none of it would have been possible had it not been for the independent living movement and the people that were very much and still are very much behind it. So without my PA service, I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't have been able to even start on that road. So that isn't a luxury, that is a right. If I didn't have that, I don't even want to think about where I would be. But just to move on swiftly, if go back to just before I entered Leaving Cert, this is a crucial point. What happened was we had the DAS test in school, which is a test that's used with young people to assist them to decide what career choices they may be good at and what career they may want to move into in the future. So I sat that test like every other student in the big hall. It was a disaster because it's all timed and I couldn't physically keep up. So when those results came back, it wasn't in any way an accurate reflection of my abilities. And I remember going into the guidance counselor's office and she looked at me and I said, you don't have to tell me, you already know. And she said, you know what? I said, I know the results are crap. That might tell me I'm stupid, but I know I'm not stupid. And she looked at me and goes, yeah, you're right. And I said, yeah, I am right. And I walked out the door. And that was the day I said, I am going to study this and I'm going to do my best to make sure that I won't be able to prevent every other human being having the same experience as I've just had, but I may be able to prevent quite a few having the same experience, and I hope I have, and I hope I will continue to do that. So following on from that, I went to UCD and I did my degree, and things weren't all rosy in the garden. Things were far from rosy in the garden, and I had an awful lot of growing up to do. It wasn't just about going to college and doing the essays and all that stuff. It was about moving out, taking responsibility for myself, and managing my own PAs, my own staff, etc., etc. So it was a very steep learning curve. And then in 2002, I began to move into the area of supporting people with disabilities in further education. And it was very important for me that it wasn't just people with physical disabilities I was working with. I wanted to get experience in supporting people across the spectrum, and also to work with parents as well. Because I firmly believe that unless you do that and support them and educate them, then you're not really going to get anywhere. It has to start from the bottom and work its way up. So I was in that role, and I still am on a part-time basis, supporting people to make the transition both from special education and mainstream education into the further education environment. And for some, it's a challenge around academia, because some of them may not have gone through the mainstream system. Some of them were even told they would never read or write, and they had blown everyone out of the water. So when they meet me, I'm like, they're not quite sure what they're getting into, because first of all, they don't expect to see someone in a wheelchair in front of them, and second of all, I will support them, but I won't take any prisoners either. So I have quite an unusual approach. So I suppose one thing that really struck me is that I always wanted to get a job. I wanted to work. I wanted to contribute to the economy. I wanted to make sure that I was doing something for myself, but also for the wider disability community. But I guess I can understand 100% why many people don't work. 5 minutes? Because sometimes it isn't worth your while. People feel and they think that I must be loaded because I have a very well-paid job. Now I do, but I've earned it, and etc., etc. But the majority of people I work with, they may be very well qualified, but they do believe that they don't have the ability to work, and they do believe that economically it's not worth their while because of all the extra hidden costs, and they believe that they don't have the ability to contribute. That is very, very, very sad. And so it isn't all about, and I do believe that the tax system and the taxation system also need to be reformed. But that's a story for another day. I think one of the speakers is speaking about it in the afternoon. That's a very interesting subject. So, to be honest, I could be here all day talking about this because I have so many different ideas. And how much time am I saying? I have so many different ideas and slants on it, and I do very much feel that the only way this is really going to change is that if people with disabilities are given the opportunity to contribute at a policy level. No one can do that on their own. It's not about me versus you and I'm better than you because I have a disability and you don't. That isn't what it's about. But basically we need to work together in partnership, and that's how real sustainable change is going to happen, and where everyone can make a valuable contribution both socially and economically to Ireland as it tries to crawl its way out of recession. The figures say that we are climbing out, but it's going to take quite a long time for people with disabilities to really be seen in the public arena. Thank you.